Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to episode 14 of the RV Connects podcast and the second episode of our Route 66 series. We're Melina.
Dan.
And together with our two girls, a teen and a tween, we are the RV Connects, lifelong road trippers who travel North America part-time in our travel trailer and demystify long trips. So essentially, yes, you can do them with your vacation time, and yes, they are worth it. Life is short, so why not hit the road while you can? If you haven't been following us on Instagram and want to follow along with our Route 66 journey, you can do so at RV Connects. We are also on Facebook at RV Connects, or you can check out our blog where we have our show notes and links to all of the places we've talked about on our shows at rvconnects.com. So again, welcome to episode 14 as we continue down Route 66. This is the second episode in our 4-episode series. We're detailing our 2018 cross-continental loop that took us over 9,500 kilometers and 26 days on the road. So if you haven't listened to leg 1, I'll link to that in the show notes, and you might want to start there as we cover the first 3 days of our trip, which covered 2,223 kilometers, so about 1,380 miles or so, from our home in southwestern Ontario to Elk City, Oklahoma. And this represented a 22-hour drive time total, but that was without stops, and we did make a few stops. So if you haven't checked that out, go back and listen to episode 13, and you can listen to the first leg of our journey. So today we're covering leg 2. So that goes from Elk City, Oklahoma to Williams, Arizona. So that took 2 days driving, and we covered just over 1,250 kilometers, so about 785 miles, and 11 and a half hours of drive time. But man, was it ever packed full of stuff.
Yep. So day 4, just to recap the tail end of the last episode, we stayed in Elk City. We went to the National Route 66 Museum the next morning. Once we got up, it was closed. It was Sunday, but we were able to walk around because it's an outside open air museum. So then we headed on to Albuquerque for the night. Elk City to Albuquerque is about 6 hours, 45 minutes, but it was packed with stuff to see. It was probably one of the favorite travel days of the trip.
Mm-hmm. So our first stop, we stopped in Shamrock, Texas at the Conoco station. So this is, it's called the U-Drop Inn, and it's a gas station that was built in the 1930s. It's on original Route 66, and this place is fantastic. However, it's also a Sunday, so it was closed. So it is also a museum. You can go in, and they have visitors that help run it, and you can ask them questions, and you can see inside. Elvis Presley stayed there at the U-Drop Inn, which I think is pretty cool. And this building, it's very, very Art Deco. Like, if you're going to pick any building on our trip that kind of represents the Art Deco movement, this would be the building. It's absolutely beautifully done, and it's a gas station. Like, it's amazing to me how all of these buildings that were built to be just functional buildings were done with such care and design and detail. But this building was actually like mapped like brick for brick and recreated exactly the way it looks in real life in the movie Cars, the Disney movie Cars, where it is Ramon's paint shop. So I just think it was super cool. The kids were like so excited to see it. And what I found was really funny is that you've got this really old, amazing architectural gas station. And then like right beside it in the parking lot in the middle of Texas, like a tiny town in Texas where everybody drives big trucks, there's like a Tesla charging station, which I thought was really cool and cute, but absolutely a must see. It was a good spot to stop as well, because I think like right across the road, there was a McDonald's. There's a ton of place to park. We got like coffees and maybe a snack or something.
Use the washroom, I think. Mm-hmm. It was RV friendly because we pulled right in.
Yeah, it was a great place to stop. A must-see on Old Route 66 is Shamrock, Texas. This is also where we learned about Big Vern's Steakhouse. Do you want to talk about Big Vern's? We haven't been there, but we have to go back. Like, our kids are still mad that we didn't take them at like 11 o'clock in the morning for like a 12-ounce steak.
Yeah, you would see a sign every 10 minutes or so for Big Vern's Steakhouse, and just made you crave a little bit of steak along the way. I think that was also where Melina jumped into the driver's seat, and we found out she has a heavy foot, and I could just hear the truck going with the gas, because I think she likes to do about 80 miles an hour. Just because the sign says you can do 80 miles an hour doesn't mean you have to do 80 miles an hour.
Okay, we didn't quite do that because I know it is not safe to do that towing. However, I did lay it down a little bit because there was no wind. It was a sunny day. We had places to be. And Dan is just saying this because Dan had this thought in his head, which he didn't share with anybody, but he actually wanted to get all the way to the Pacific Ocean and back, and he wanted to have the best gas mileage that anybody has ever had towing a trailer ever. So he was like obsessed about like you have to go like 91 kilometers an hour because that's like optimum gas mileage. But I didn't know that, and he didn't share that with me. So
as the guy who picks out the gas stops, what I will tell you is as you make this trip down the road, you could hit a tailwind one day and pick up an extra 100 kilometers, 60 miles to a tank, and hit a headwind the next day and lose that in gas mileage, which is kind of interesting. I mean, hey, if you're into RV and then miles per gallon really shouldn't be a concern, but Melina's right. I did have a bit of an obsession with it, but your dad was interested in it too, so that's okay. So I think we also knocked off the Cadillac Ranch, which is half a dozen 8 cars stuck in their bumpers into the ground. It's really just didn't cost us anything, I don't think.
No, but one thing with the Cadillac Ranch is we actually had to pass the Cadillac Ranch, turn around, and come at it from the other direction, because we knew this beforehand from research that if you are driving a trailer or a bigger vehicle or an RV of some sort, the shoulder on that side of the road, like as you're pulling up, there's nowhere to turn around, and the shoulder from that side of the road there is no shoulder, so you cannot park. So we actually had to bypass the Cadillac Ranch, get off at the next exit, and then head back going east. So there was and it was still a soft shoulder, don't get me wrong, like you have to be very careful, but that's pretty much the only place to park is like you just stop at the side of the road and get out. So we didn't stay there long.
Maybe 10, 15 minutes, and
yeah.
People spray paint the cars. And so for all you cheapskate dads out there, don't worry. There's enough half-used cans of spray paint lying around on the ground that your kids can participate too, and it won't cost you any money.
Well, that's because it's technically illegal to spray paint the cars, although everybody does it. So we didn't bring our own cans in. So technically we weren't breaking the law. But if we picked some up off the ground, then according to our kids, that's okay because there was still a little bit left and it was just going in the garbage anyway. So, and I'm sure, honestly, there was a ton of people there. It's kind of one of those, you can hit it or you can miss it. I'm glad we stopped because it's iconic and you get some really good pictures out of it. But like, there's so many people there that I guarantee you, like 10 minutes after we spray painted our names on the cars, like they were already covered over with somebody else. But
you got to get out and stretch your legs anyways.
Yep.
And then I think we pushed on to the Midpoint Cafe.
Yeah. We've talked about this like 3 times on the show, but here we go again.
Yes, it's where my daughter ate 3 pies plus a huge burger and a bottle of pop and still wanted more. But absolutely great food, and I think we were all just starving when we got there.
So they're really only open till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon though. So if you want to go there, they have a fantastic breakfast, they have a fantastic lunch, and they have the most amazing pies on the planet. But if you're going to go, make sure you hit it before 2 o'clock because they do close. And the great thing about the Midpoint Cafe is it is exactly halfway between Chicago and Santa Monica. So there is a sign. There's actually a line on the road, or there's supposed to be a line on the road, which demarks the exact halfway point, and it makes for a lot of really great photos. And my parents did this trip prior to us, following most of the same places we went in May of that year, and the line was on the road. And when we went in July, it had like freshly been paved. And so they paved right over the line. So the line was gone, but the sign was there and it demarks the exact halfway mark. And there's a little stand you can put your camera on to take a photo of your family, which is really cool. And there's an old gas station beside the Midpoint Cafe that's got some antiques and collectibles and whatnot. And that's where we picked up our Easy Route 66 guide, which we believe we probably should have picked up earlier than we actually did. And we mentioned that on episode 1. I am going to link to this book in every single episode. And like I said, this was something we didn't really find out about until halfway through our trip. And it's kind of like that insider's guide. Like everybody who's an insider on Route 66 knows about this guide. So this guidebook is like a little coil bound, I don't know, it's like 6x9 maybe, like it's not very big, but it's a little coil bound book that has all of the old parts of Route 66, tells you where you can and can't go in an RV or a trailer. And it was probably the most valuable bucks we ever spent on the trip. So the Midpoint Cafe is something I think that is an absolute must-do, cannot be missed. After that point, we passed into New Mexico. So we really, Texas, you're really only crossing like the panhandle. It's very small, like a couple of hours and you're through it. And then we went to a really cool town, and I know I'm going to murder the name, but I think it's Tucumcari, New Mexico. And that is where they have probably one of the best stretches of old Route 66 that we've seen in terms of buildings with like the old neon signs that have been totally restored. There is the very, very famous Blue Swallow Motel, which if you Google it, I'm sure you'll have seen pictures of it elsewhere. But this motel is like one of these little roadside motels. And I think it was built in the 20s or the 30s, but it is button cute. Like it's been restored. And every single motel room has its own single car garage. And that's kind of what it's famous for. Is you would roll up to the motel and just pull your car in the garage, and you'd have your own garage at this, $4 roadside motel for the night. And it's super cool. So the only regret I have about that town is like, I would have liked to stay there and just walk the strip of this downtown at night and see all the neon, but it was like the middle of the afternoon, so none of that stuff was lit up, but equally cool to see on the road.
Yep. And then I think our next stop was into the Albuquerque Walmart just to pick up resupply, basically. And Walmart is not a destination. Everybody's got a Walmart, but I think this is the point on the trip where you have to remember it wasn't too far before this. We were in St. Louis, and it was trees and hills, and it kind of looked not a whole lot different than southwestern Ontario. But by the time we got to Oklahoma and we're going through day 3 and day 4 and on into day 5, the scenery would change like every 15 minutes. There was a new geological feature. And I think the Albuquerque Walmart is symbolic of that, in the sense that the Walmart stocked Southwest type foods. It was definitely a different experience, even though there's Walmarts all over North America. Really easy to swing into with your trailer, park at the back, get in, get groceries, restock, and then kind of just push on to the other side of town to the Enchanted Trails RV Park, which again was another great find on RV Parky.
And this was a last minute find because we were going to stay at the Albuquerque Walmart, but the crime rate in Albuquerque is actually really, really high. Like they have one of the highest crime rates in the United States. And we didn't feel unsafe there at all. Like everybody was really friendly when we stopped for stuff, but we decided to use RV Parky to find a different place to stay. Also too, we kind of changed plans on the fly because Dan mentioned in the previous episode, it's a whole lot easier or a whole lot better for us anyway to pay, $20 American a night and have a site with full hookups, and mostly so we can run the air conditioner, than it is to boondock in the middle of the desert in July. It was hot, man, like really hot. So we decided not to stay at the Albuquerque Walmart. So we found Enchanted Trails just by chance. And there was a couple of places in that area. But we just figured, you know what, this one's right on Old Route 66. It's right off the interstate. Let's give it a try. And it was probably, like, I tell every single person who's going down Route 66, if you're stopping in Albuquerque, go here. It was fantastic. They had a super clean pool, a little trading post with gifts, probably one of the best sunsets I have ever seen. We took from the back fence of that park, looking over the fields into the New Mexico mountains. Like, it was absolutely beautiful. And they also have, I don't know, what do you say, like 6 vintage trailers and cars?
Yeah, a little outdoor display, kind of.
Like, you could rent them, though.
Oh, could you?
Yeah. They had like 6 or 8 like vintage trailers, like old Airstreams, and like vintage cars hooked up to vintage trailers with AstroTurf and like vintage lawn chairs outside. And you can actually rent these. And it was amazing. It was the coolest park ever. And I think we just like cooked some pizza that night and watched the sunset. And it was like that much needed, like decompress, like you could feel the air changing into like this, really warm, dry desert air. And it was just kind of like when we hit Albuquerque, we could feel like we were on truly vacation because it was stuff that we had never seen before.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And, just a great spot to recharge. I'm pretty certain it's right beside a Camping World as well.
Yeah.
So I guess if you needed to get parts, that's kind of handy. We didn't, so that's fortunate. But if I also recall, as you're coming from the east to the west, that put us on the other side of Albuquerque when we started out for the day, which kind of was important. Good. It's always good when you're traveling through a city. If you have the opportunity to get the far side of the city, then you don't need to fight rush hour the next morning. But we get up the next day, day 5 at this point. It's Albuquerque to Williams, Arizona, which was where we were going to settle before going into the Grand Canyon. So that's 550 kilometers, about 345 miles. A short 5-hour drive for us that day. And so we stopped at the Chief Yellow Horse Trading Post on the New Mexico-Arizona border, which was kind of cool, little handmade crafts and artisan type things to the right. And then if I recall, there was a rest stop down to the left where where I think we had lunch, stretched our legs, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
we rolled out the awning and had our lunch, and it was quite kind of cool because I think if across the interstate there was like cross country trains, and every so often you'd see like a freight train come by at the bottom of these like red rock mountains. It was really cool how quickly, as Dan mentioned, the scenery changed. But I think we took so long at this trading post and just chilling out and just relaxing that we actually had to knock something off our trip. And Albuquerque to Williams is only like a 5-hour drive. So we were like, yeah, no problem. We put Meteor Crater on our list, which was something that it's cool. We want to see it, but I think you need a couple hours to see it, especially if you're going to like hike down into the crater. And we realized at that point, by the time we see all this other stuff we want to see, we're going to have to knock, like something's got to give. So we decided to knock Meteor Crater off the list. But definitely, I think we could skip, some of the stuff we did see the next time we go back and make time for Meteor Crater. But after the trading post, we went to Holbrook, Arizona, to the Wigwam Motel, which we all know is very famous. They've got kind of like teepee looking hotel rooms. And that, of course, was the inspiration for the Cozy Cone Motel in the Disney Cars movie. And it was actually really fortunate because was it you or Fiona who ran into the cleaning lady?
I'm not sure who, but we all did get to take a look.
We got to take a look inside the rooms because the cleaning lady was coming out of one of the rooms as we were just kind of standing there trying to look in the window. And she's like, yeah, go on in, have a look. So we got a couple pictures and whatnot of the inside of the rooms. It's pretty original, I would say. They do their best to keep it very vintage inside. So the Wigwam Motel was pretty cool because they also have a bunch of vintage vehicles outside parked there to give it ambiance. And I think Holbrook had dinosaurs or something. There was like these big plaster dinosaurs that you'd see like in a theme park or something on the side of the road. It was just one of these cool Route 66 towns that have neat stuff to look at.
Yeah, so I think we got back on the highway, got rolling down the highway again, and I made us get all off the highway. I think people were getting cranky in the afternoon, but I forced us off the highway to follow the original Route 66, and that brought us into Winslow, Arizona, from the Eagles song. And so we were standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. We were quite the sight to see. See that good dad joke there? But actually, it was a really cool town, really easy to get down. I think I had to drive around the block with the trailer, but we ended up parking on Main Street with the whole trailer, the whole rig, and getting out, stretching our legs and seeing something cool, taking a couple of pictures. There's the truck is there.
Yeah, there's a flatbed Ford right on the corner, so you can take some photos and with some statues and things. But Winslow also had that tiny little chapel, like the world's smallest chapel or America's smallest chapel. Remember, it was like this tiny little like phone booth size like chapel on the main street. Like it's just a cool town to see. I really liked Winslow. And actually, one thing we didn't realize was there until after we left and we were watching a documentary. There's this really amazing, like we would call them in Canada, like the CP era railway hotels. So like the Royal York and all of that kind of stuff. But it's one of these old turn of the century, first part of the 20th century railway hotels. And they've actually renovated it to a very high standard. It's right on the railroad tracks in Winslow. So I'll have to look up the name, but definitely I want to go back to that. Like Dan said, you're never going to see all of it.
But one of those kind of spur of the moment things. And then we push on from there to Williams, Arizona. We got in pretty good time. The sun was still up, chance to just recharge and re-energize ourselves, because keep in mind, up until this point, it was stay overnight in one spot and move down the road. And when we got to Williams, Arizona, which kind of reminded me a little bit of Whistler in some respects, but in any case, that's another story. It's an RV resort. We're staying there for 2 nights. You go in, you check in, there's a proper hotel. I think we went over there for a buffet buffet dinner. We had buffet dinner there. There's a little bit of a show in the evening, hooked ourselves up, got cleaned up, and then we walked into town.
Which, when he says walked into town, it's like, I don't know, 200 meters. Like, it's,
not far.
You know, not even half a mile into downtown. But we stayed at, it's called the Grand Canyon Railway and RV Resort.
Yeah, but just, go back to our RV resort versus RV park versus, boondocking differential episode. And it was a really nice spot to do that. I think you might have did laundry in there, but in any case, it doesn't matter. Most important part I love in the downtown is just the cool retro downtown. And I think I had the best Navajo tacos. I never knew they were such a thing, but I had Navajo tacos. That was amazing. And I think the other thing I just got to hit on again is the scenery is changing every 15 minutes. Just there's massive trains out in the desert, and then there's mountains, and then there's trees, and then there's back to mountains and desert, and it's just all over the place. Just incredible. And it was from there we used that as our jumping off point to get up to the Grand Canyon.
One thing I would say, I would definitely spend more time in Williams, because Williams has a very like pumping nightlife. Like everybody is out downtown. Like everybody goes downtown every night. There's like gunfights, like they do
recreation gunfights,
theatrical gunfights in the street, like Old West style, where robbers come and they have it's amazing. Like it's just a super cool town. Everybody's out, the patios are open, the drinks are flowing, like people are having a great time. You could probably have a week in Williams and not get bored. There's a couple of really great microbreweries in town. It is a fantastic place. There's a place we had breakfast, which the girls don't remember stopping here, but I do, because this place was famous for pie, and I didn't want to order a pie at breakfast because I thought that would make me look like a glutton, but I'm really sad that I didn't try try the pie because they had one of these like amazing pie cases where they lay out all their different types of pie. But the breakfast was really good too. So next time we go, I'm just going to eat a whole pie by myself. One of the great things about this place was that the train, the RV park is literally right beside the main building, which is also a hotel, and the train station. And you take a steam powered train up to the rim of the Grand Canyon. And that's one of the places we decided to stay there. We thought that would be a cool treat for the kids instead of trying to drive up. The camping at the Grand Canyon fills up really, really fast. And there are some public lands and things you can camp on the side of the road, but we just thought this would be a really cool place to stay and a treat to give the girls to go up to the rim in this train.
Yeah, and we really only had a day, so it was nice and easy. Show up, get on the train in the morning, ride the train up. It's just slightly longer than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Doesn't really matter. Get up to the Grand Canyon. There's a bit of entertainment on the train as you go. Mm-hmm. You get off. You get very strict instructions not to miss the train because it's a long walk home. And then you just get to see the whole Grand Canyon from the national park setup that they have there. Actually walk down 10 minutes on the trail just to get a little feel, but absolute great day, and then back on the train.
Yeah, so you really have to watch your timings and have a look at the clock, because I think we ended up with 3 hours there. And like Dan said, they were very explicit. The train leaves at 3 o'clock if you're not on the train, or I don't know if it was 3 or 4 or whenever we left. But they're like, if basically that's it. We're 1 minute late and we're waving at you as we're pulling out of the station. They have a very strict schedule. So they drop you off. Where the train drops you off is right at the base of the El Tovar Hotel, which is the big, famous, very, very old hotel on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. So you walk up the steps and you walk past the El Tovar, and I was looking at the kids' faces because we've talked about the Grand Canyon and we've seen the Grand Canyon in photographs, but to see it in real life is it's mind-blowing. It's still, you look at the Grand Canyon, you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and it reveals itself to you as you walk past the hotel. And it's still almost like you're looking at a photograph because your mind can't comprehend the absolute scale of the canyon, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it, but it still almost doesn't look real when you're standing right there and looking at it.
Yeah, so it was just incredible.
When we arrived, we walked along the rim. And then after we got our first impression of the canyon, of course, everybody was hungry. It was about 1 o'clock, I think, by the time we got there, or shortly before. And so we walked along the rim, and then we kind of took a turn left into the village, the Grand Canyon Village, and we went to Yavapi Lodge, which there's a pizza joint inside the lodge, which is fresh wood-fired pizza, and it was fantastic pizza. Our kids are pizza snobs. They really judge the crust, the quality of the crust of every pizza I think they've ever eaten. But it was a quick pizza. It was fast. It was delicious. It was the perfect sustenance. We got to see some of the other hotels in the village, and then we walked back to the rim as well. And then when we walked back to the rim, we arrived right at the Bright Angel trailhead, which is one of the main trailheads going down into the canyon. And if you stand at the Bright Angel trailhead and look down, way down, you'll see a grove of trees, a lonely grove of trees at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And a guide told us that if you leave at 5 a.m., they get to that grove of trees by high noon, and they camp there because there's quite a difference in temperature between the top and the bottom of the canyon. So that was actually kind of a cool thing to see because it provided some scale so you could figure it out. If you're going to walk down the Bright Angel trailhead or any of the trailheads while you're there, just know that it's busy. So you're going to actually have to stop and put your back against the canyon wall to let people pass you. And it's going to take you twice as long to get back up as it does to go down. So keep that in mind if you have taken the train up there and you don't have all day and all night, that we walked about maybe 10 or 15 minutes down, and then we kind of got into a bottleneck on the trail, and we realized, we're not equipped to go any further, and it's going to take us that much longer to get back up. So we walked down, 10 or 15 minutes and walked back up and got some ice cream. But that's a good thing to note because you will be left behind. And one other thing to note, I think probably about the Grand Canyon is the walls are knee high. If you go over that rim ridge, you're going down and you're not coming back up type of thing. It's you have to have a great respect for nature. If you're going to visit a park like this, don't go traipsing down any of the trailheads wearing wedge sandals. Have respect for the fact that yes, it's a main tourist area, but it's still a very natural resource and a natural park by design. and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you kind of aren't prepared for what you're doing. So don't go crazy. If you're only there to look at the rim and take some cute photos for Instagram, then that's all you're going to do. And if you want to hike it, then you're going to have to come back on a different day with that sole thing in mind.
And that's the nice feel of the Grand Canyon. As much as there's a tourist setup there, there isn't, a big 10-foot fence holding you back from the edge. Mm-hmm. So, act like an adult so that we can all enjoy it as adults.
Yeah, for sure. So then on the train back, it went fairly smoothly. We had to stop twice because there was actually some brush fires and things along the way.
Yeah, nobody wants to see a wildfire, but the girls got to see a wildfire crew out there cleaning up a small grass fire, which was interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I won't ruin the surprise, but on the way back, you might come across some people of a less than savory nature who might want to steal your goods. But it was a great train trip for girls. And as Dan mentioned, there's like entertainment on the way up, and Isla got to play the fiddle with the entertainer on the train, which was really cool. I'm sure she's super embarrassed about it still, but she did a very lovely job.
Yep. And then I think that gets us back into the park, really, before we pick up the next day and push on to California.
So that was day 6. So we got to Williams on day 5. We spent day 6 in the Grand Canyon, and then day 7 we arrived in Anaheim. We arrived in California. So that's the focus of next episode, which is episode 3 of our 4-part series. And we're going to talk about all of the time we spent in California, because we did spend a week there in California, Anaheim, Southern California. We went to Central California, and we're going to talk about Las Vegas as well. So there's a lot to unpack in that episode.
There's a few stories. One of the girls threw up. We had a little bit of interesting time crossing from Arizona into California. So there's a few stories on the next episode.
For sure. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.